What does the word timeless mean to you? Something that endures? Something that can resist the endless march of time and stand firm like a mountain in the face of all that the world throws at it? Is it something perhaps that lasts forever because it lives outside of the physical world, in the hearts and minds of the people? In the world of motorcycles, there was once a British brand that fit this description: Norton. Formed in 1898, they spent their early days as a race bike manufacturer that led countless riders to victory, and when the World War came, they became a hero, building over 100,000 motorcycles to support the Allied troops. The company had a legacy. Norton bikes were even talked about by Che Guevara in his memoir The Motorcycle Diaries and featured on the silver screen in the James Bond film Spectre. Over an entire century, Norton motorcycles found their way into the hearts of bikers all over the world. But sometimes, timeless brands don't last. Sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes, as was the case with Norton motorcycles, they end up in the wrong hands, hands which pulled them through a series of scandals and eventually caused them to go bust, leaving behind angry pension holders, customers who lost everything, corrupt managers, even government officials were involved, all dealing with millions of fraudulent pounds and a chaotic whirlwind of events that dragged the Norton name through the mud for many years. What happened is a complex tale of how one man tarnished the name of a timeless company, and in the end was responsible for the destruction of a dynasty. This is the story of Norton Motorcycles. The Norton brand, as I mentioned earlier, was a real British powerhouse when it came to motorcycles. Founded in 1898 by James Lansdowne Norton, Norton Motorcycles evolved from producing bicycle components to becoming a renowned British motorcycle manufacturer. The brand gained racing success, including victories at the Isle of Man TT in the early 1900s, then went on to win a load of championships through the decades. Later, the brand became the main motorcycle provider for the Allied troops in World War II, before going to set records in the racing world during the 1960s. However, it was during the 60s that Norton's parent company, AMC, went bankrupt, and the Norton brand started changing hands pretty regularly. There was basically a constant flow of people buying and selling the brand. Fast forward to the 21st century, and after being owned by a US company for 15 years, the Norton brand was bought in 2008 by Stuart Garner, a British businessman with no background in the motorcycle world and who would later become the focus of anger when it came to the downfall of Norton. Although he had no experience building or selling motorcycles, Garner claimed to be interested in the Norton brand because of the company's Commando 961 prototypes. These prototypes were created by Kenny Dreer, the Oregon-based former owner of Norton. Garner basically said that he intended to develop Dreer's designs. As we'll see, this may not have been entirely true. Already there were pretty big red flags about Garner. The thing is, he needed a lot of money to buy the Norton brand, and the way he raised it wasn't exactly trustworthy. The first thing he did was offer up a company he owned at the time as collateral for buying Norton. Except the thing is, he didn't completely own it. He only had a 50% stake. So he was offering up money that basically wasn't his. The rest of the money, around £1 million, was loaned to him by two of his friends. But get this, those friends were later arrested in 2013 because that money had been raised through a tax fraud scheme. Although no connection was made between Garner and this crime, he had still used illegal money to purchase Norton. Once he took control and had operations up and running, Norton Motorcycles was getting money from two main sources. The first were grants from the UK government worth millions of pounds, making the Norton brand supported by members of Parliament. The second was through an investment scheme he came up with. Garner encouraged customers to invest in Norton motorcycle pension plans, accumulating a total of around £14 million. Just so we're clear, a pension plan prepares people for retirement. As they work, they save and invest money, and sometimes their employer contributes too. The pensions are then invested in assets like stocks and bonds and potentially grow over time. Then, when people retire, the money is paid back to them as an income. So, basically, a load of Norton motorcycle customers were investing their life savings into the company. And what do you think Garner did with all this money? Invest it into the brand? Use it for Norton R&D or pay its suppliers? No. The guy bought Donington Hall, which is a massive mansion in the UK. You could call it a mini castle, to be honest. Although he said the hall was to be the headquarters for Norton, which it was mostly his personal residence. Garner also bought not one, or two, or even three, but 6 Aston Martin cars. Garner even used the Norton brand to get himself a cameo role in the 2015 James Bond film Spectre, and traveled with a government trade mission to China on Theresa May's jet when she was Prime Minister of the UK. He was taking people's life savings, and instead of investing it, he was supporting his luxurious lifestyle. Now, Norton did produce several hundred motorcycles under Garner. These models included the 1200cc 200 HP V4 Superbike announced in 2016, along with the Superlight and the Superlight SS, which featured a supercharger, a carbon fiber frame, and 175 horsepower. There was also the Atlas Ranger and the Atlas Nomad, both 650cc models. However, this is where things get really bad. That's because for the several hundred bikes that were released, there were hundreds more bikes, if not thousands, that were never produced and never received by customers. That's right, the real truth behind all Garner's fancy buildings, government grants, and media frenzy was that Norton Motorcycles wasn't producing nearly as many bikes as people had been expecting. There were even complaints from customers that Norton had been stealing parts. It's crazy. People had been bringing their bikes in for service only to have parts removed and used to build new bikes. And this was all because Garner was spending company money on himself and not paying the suppliers. The truth was, by the time the company went into administration, the process where administrators take over the company and try to stop it from closing down, it only had about 70 bikes in stock. Out of these, 24 were bikes that customers had sent in for service or warranty work. As of the end of January, they were working on just 14 bikes, and none of them were close to being done. On top of that, Norton also had 13 bikes that were fully built, and they had 5 more bikes meant for display in other countries. Yet, for so few actual motorcycles, the company's debt was astronomical. Massive debt was soon going to be the name of the game when it came to Norton Motorcycles. One of the biggest sources of this debt was money owed on taxes. By 2019, the taxman was knocking on Garner's front door, looking for around £700,000 of unpaid taxes. On top of that, customers of Norton Motorcycles had put down deposits for new motorcycles, ones which, as I've said, weren't being built. In total, Garner owed his customers around £3 million in deposits. On top of the taxman and customers, Norton Motorcycles had one secured creditor, Metro Bank, which it owed a whopping £4 million, and this figure kept on rising as the interest built up. Metro Bank had apparently been trying to find a solution with Norton Motorcycles for months, but when nothing worked, it pulled the plug and called the administrators. And that's where we reach it, the beginning of the end. Not that you couldn't already have seen it coming by this point. Garner had set up other companies too, like Spondon, a chassis maker, to help build the new motorcycles, as well as Norton Motorcycle Holdings Limited, Donington Hall Estates Limited, and Priest House Hotel Limited, all of which were based out of the same headquarters at Donington Hall. Metro Bank was the main creditor for most of these, so they all went into administration with the Norton brand. That means, in total, Garner's company ended up owing Metro Bank around £8 million. And that's not even to mention unsecured creditors who were owed just under $6 million. The debt wasn't Garner's only problem, though. People were angry. A load of customers who had paid deposits for Norton Motorcycles were still waiting for their bikes, which hadn't even been built. Hundreds of people lost their life savings, many of whom were financially vulnerable, and all the while, Garner had been using these pension investments to fund his life of luxury in his castle. The BBC reported later that people suffered from broken relationships, illness, and had to work during their retirement years because their money had been lost in Garner's pocket. So as you can imagine, finding a buyer to rescue the company was gonna be tough. Even though, somehow, Norton Motorcycles had received millions of pounds in government grants over the years, a cash flow that Garner had been exploiting in the name of so-called research and development, alongside a tidy sum of cash from selling the rights to some of its twin-cylinder bike models to Chinese companies. The company debt wasn't exactly that attractive to prospective buyers. The company did have something going for it, though: intellectual property. Norton, after all, is a timeless brand with over 100 years of history. Regardless of the physical bikes, the company brand, trademark, and designs were worth around 5 or 6 million pounds. Add on a few more million pounds of international investment and other assets, there was a sliver of hope for the company. So in April 2020, the company was sold in a cash deal to the Indian TVS Motor Company for 16 million pounds. TVS intended to continue producing motorcycles at Donington Hall with the same staff members, minus Stuart Garner, of course. Even though the company had been sold, Garner's troubles continued. The Pensions Ombudsman, which is an independent organization set up by the UK government that helps people with problems or disagreements about their pension plans, accused Garner of dishonesty and breaking investment laws in 2021 and ordered him to pay back millions of pounds to pension holders. Sadly, though, Garner never paid this back because he finally declared bankruptcy in May 2021. In February 2022, Garner admitted to taking around 11 million pounds from 3 employee pension funds, which he was the only one in charge of, and used that money for supposed business investments. Then, fast forward to March 2022, to everyone's shock, Garner was given a slap on the wrist of a suspended sentence of 8 months in prison. He didn't actually spend time behind bars, though. A suspended prison sentence means that a person is given a jail term, but they don't have to go to jail right away. Instead, they can stay out of jail as long as they follow certain rules. To add more injury to insult, Garner was only ordered by the court to pay a tiny fine of just over £20,000. It was only in July of 2023 that members of Parliament in the UK announced that they were digging into the whole pension fraud case. So, at the moment, legal proceedings are ongoing and a load of people are still waiting for their money. It's a sad story that hopefully, one day, will be finally resolved. For now, though, Norton has a new factory in the West Midlands of England, and all ties to the former CEO have been cut. The brand was given a fresh start, but the black mark on its reputation would take time to heal. The downfall of Norton Motorcycles not only affected pension holders, investors, and customers, but also cast a shadow of doubt on the company's integrity in the eyes of the public. What was a timeless and classic brand had been taken and destroyed by Garner, and the downfall was meteoric. Broken faith, not lost money, always takes the longest to heal. Either way, the story goes on, and hopefully, the company's new owners will bring back the Norton spirit. Until then, though, we can only put our trust in the brand. If it survives this, nothing will ever stop it. Perhaps that's what timeless really means.